Desperate to provide for her son, Mia takes a job as a caregiver at Ethan Blackwood's ranch, where she finds a man broken by the accident that left him paralyzed. But when she discovers years' worth of hidden love letters written to her, everything changes. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from. Mia Matthews stared at the final notice in her hand, the bold red letters blurring as tears filled her eyes. Another bill she couldn't pay. The stack on her kitchen table seemed to grow taller by the day. Electric, water, rent, medical expenses for her son Tyler's asthma medication. "Mommy, can I have some juice?" 6-year-old Tyler stood in the doorway of their small kitchen, clutching his favorite dinosaur toy. Mia quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "Of course, sweetie." She reached for the nearly empty carton in the refrigerator, mentally calculating how she could stretch their groceries until her next paycheck, if she even had a job by then. The diner where she'd worked for the past 3 years had cut her hours dramatically. Tourism in the small farming town of Meadow Creek had dried up, and locals were spending less too. Now she was down to just 2 shifts a week, nowhere near enough to support herself and Tyler. "Miss Matthews?" A stern voice came from behind her as she wiped down tables later that afternoon. It was her boss, Mr. Jenkins. "Can I speak with you in my office?" Mia's heart sank. She knew what was coming. 10 minutes later, she walked out of the diner unemployed, her final paycheck barely enough to cover next week's groceries. She sat in her beat-up Honda, gripping the steering wheel as she fought back tears. Tyler was at her neighbor Mrs. Wilson's house, the kind elderly woman who watched him during Mia's shifts and never charged her full price. "Think, Mia," she whispered to herself. "You've got to figure this out." She started the car and headed to Mrs. Wilson's, trying to keep panic at bay. As she drove through town, she barely noticed the familiar sights, the small shops lining Main Street, the town square with its gazebo where summer concerts were held, the old church where she used to attend Sunday school as a girl. What she did notice was the help wanted sign in the window of Miller's pharmacy. She pulled over immediately. "I'm so sorry, dear," Mr. Miller told her after she inquired about the position. "I just hired someone this morning, but you know," he paused, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "I did hear something that might interest you. Old Doc Henderson mentioned he's looking for a caregiver for Ethan Blackwood." "Ethan Blackwood?" Mia repeated. The name sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Everyone in Meadow Creek knew the Blackwood family. They owned the largest farm in the county, thousands of acres of wheat fields, orchards, and pastures for cattle. She'd gone to high school with Ethan, though he'd been 2 years ahead of her. Handsome, confident, from one of the wealthiest families in the area, he'd barely known she existed. "Had a terrible accident about 6 months ago," Mr. Miller continued. "Fell from the hayloft in his barn. Paralyzed from the waist down, poor fellow. I heard he's not doing well. Fired 3 caregivers already. But the pay is good, real good. Live-in position too." Mia thanked him and left, her mind racing. A live-in position meant no rent to pay. And if the salary was as good as Mr. Miller hinted, she picked up Tyler from Mrs. Wilson's and headed straight to Dr. Henderson's office. The elderly doctor had been Meadow Creek's physician for over 40 years, treating everything from farming accidents to delivering most of the town's babies. "Mia Matthews," he greeted her warmly when his receptionist showed her in. "Haven't seen you since Tyler's last checkup. How is the little man?" "He's good, thank you," Mia replied, settling Tyler with a coloring book before explaining her situation. And inquiry about the caregiver position. Dr. Henderson's expression grew serious. "I won't sugarcoat it, Mia. Ethan's in a dark place. The accident changed everything for him. He was always so active, so independent. Now he needs help with the most basic tasks, and he's not handling it well. He's angry, bitter, pushes everyone away. I can handle difficult," Mia said firmly. "I've worked with all kinds of customers at the diner." "This is different," the doctor warned. "But," he studied her thoughtfully, "you've always had a gentle way about you. Maybe that's what he needs. The pay is $3,000 a month plus room and board for you and Tyler." Mia gasped. It was more than double what she made at the diner. "I'll call the estate manager, Margaret Winters. She handles all the hiring for the Blackwood property. If you're serious, you could start as early as tomorrow." The next morning, Mia drove through the imposing wrought-iron gates of Blackwood Farm, Tyler wide-eyed in the back seat. The long driveway wound through perfectly maintained fields before opening to reveal a stunning two-story farmhouse. Though grand in size, it had the warm, welcoming look of a family home rather than a showplace. Wraparound porch with rocking chairs, flower boxes blooming with spring colors, a tire swing hanging from a massive oak tree. Margaret Winters met them. At the door, a tall, no-nonsense woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She'd been with the Blackwood family for decades, Mia remembered. She ran the household with military precision, but had always had candy for the local kids when they came by selling fundraiser items for school. "Mia, it's good to see you again," Margaret said, her expression softening at the sight of Tyler hiding behind his mother's legs. "And who's this handsome young man?" After Tyler was settled in the kitchen with homemade cookies and milk under the watchful eye of Rosa, the housekeeper, Margaret gave Mia a tour of the house. "Your quarters will be here in the east wing," she explained, showing Mia a beautiful suite with a bedroom for her and a smaller connected room for Tyler. "Ethan's rooms are in the west wing. You'll help him with his morning routine, physical therapy exercises, meals and medication. Dr. Henderson visits twice a week to check his progress." "What about his family?" Mia asked. "I remember he has a brother. James lives in Chicago with his wife. He calls regularly but rarely visits. Their parents passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. Ethan's been running the farm ever since. Until the accident." Margaret's expression grew troubled. "I should warn you, Ethan isn't the boy you might remember from school. The accident changed him. He was thrown from the hayloft during a storm, broke his back. The doctors say he might walk again someday with intensive therapy, but Ethan," she sighed, "he's given up, refuses to really try." They stopped outside a closed door at the end of a hallway. "He knows you're coming," Margaret said quietly. "But don't expect a warm welcome." Nothing could have prepared Mia for the man sitting in the wheelchair by the window. Ethan Blackwood had always been the golden boy of Meadow Creek, tall, athletic, with sun-streaked brown hair and an easy smile that made every girl's heart flutter. The man before her was physically the same, still handsome with those striking blue eyes, but everything else had changed. His hair was longer, unkempt, a beard shadowed his once clean-shaven jaw, but it was his eyes that shocked her most. Once bright with confidence and warmth, now hard and cold. He didn't turn to look at her when she entered, just continued staring out at the rolling fields beyond his window. "Mr. Blackwood," Mia said gently, "I'm Mia Matthews. I'll be your new caregiver." "Don't bother unpacking," he said, his voice rough as if from disuse. "You won't last the week." Mia stepped further into the room, refusing to be intimidated. "I think I will, actually. I need this job, Mr. Blackwood." That got his attention. He turned, eyes narrowed as he studied her. A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed his face before the hardness returned. "Mia Matthews," he said slowly. "From town. You worked at the diner." "Yes." She was surprised he knew that. "You have a son. Tyler. He's 6. Ethan looked back out the window. "This isn't a place for a child." "Tyler's very well behaved," Mia replied, "and the house is certainly big enough. Margaret says we'll be staying in the east wing." Margaret says," he muttered. "Everyone making decisions about my life. Well, here's one from me. I don't want you here. I don't need a babysitter." "Good, because I'm not applying to be one," Mia replied evenly. "I'm a caregiver with experience helping people regain their independence, which, from what I understand, is exactly what you need." He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. "What I need is for people to leave me. Alone? So you can do what? Sit and stare out the window all day? How's that working out for you?" His head snapped around, surprise registering on his face at her directness. "Margaret mentioned you fired 3 caregivers already," Mia continued. "Let me guess. They tiptoed around you, treated you like you might break, let you wallow in self-pity." "You don't know anything about me," he growled. "I know you were one of the most successful farmers in the county before your accident. I know you took over this place after your parents died and made it even more productive. I know you used to ride in the rodeo, coached Little League baseball, and donated generously to the school's agriculture program. She paused. "And now I know you've given up." Ethan's hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair, knuckles white. For a long moment, he just stared at her, and Mia wondered if she'd gone too far. "Your first job," he finally said, "is to get me a cup of coffee black, then you can help me into the bathroom. If you're going to be paid to help me, you might as well make yourself useful." It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. The next few days settled into a routine. Mia would arrive in Ethan's room at 7 a.m. with his breakfast tray. She'd help him with his morning routine, bathing, dressing, grooming, all while he maintained a stony silence or responded with one-word answers to her questions. Tyler adapted to their new home with the resilience of youth, delighted by the spacious grounds and the attention from Margaret and Rosa. Mia made sure he understood to stay away from Ethan's wing of the house unless invited, which seemed unlikely to ever happen. By the end of the first week, Mia was exhausted, not from the physical demands of the job, but from the emotional toll of dealing with Ethan's constant rejection. Every attempt at conversation was rebuffed. Every suggestion for an activity outside his room was refused. He went through his physical therapy exercises with minimal effort, clearly just going through the motions. "You're not trying," she told him one morning as he half-heartedly lifted the small weights Dr. Henderson had prescribed. "What's the point?" he shot back. "So I can build my upper body strength, become a champion wheelchair basketball player, live my best disabled life." "So you can get stronger," Mia replied calmly. "So you can be more independent. So you can stop feeling sorry for yourself and start living again." "This isn't living," he said bitterly. "This is existing." Later that afternoon, while Ethan napped, Mia took Tyler for a walk around the property. The May sunshine was warm on their faces as they explored the gardens behind the house. "Is Mr. Ethan a bad man?" Tyler asked suddenly, surprising Mia. "No, sweetie," she replied carefully. "He's a sad man, and when people are very sad, sometimes they act mean because they don't know what else to do with all their hurt feelings." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Like when I broke my dinosaur and yelled at you even though it wasn't your fault?" Mia smiled, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Exactly like that. Mr. Ethan had a bad accident and now he's angry because his body doesn't work the way it used to." They continued walking, coming to the edge of an apple orchard. The trees were covered in delicate pink and white blossoms, a few petals drifting down in the light breeze. "This place is so beautiful," Mia murmured, more to herself than to Tyler. "It used to be his favorite spot," a voice said behind them. Mia turned to find Margaret approaching, a basket of fresh-cut flowers in her arms. "Ethan, I mean. He proposed to his college girlfriend here, under that big tree at the end of the row." "I didn't know he was engaged," Mia said, surprised. "He wasn't, not for long. She left him about a month after he proposed. Said she loved him but couldn't see herself as a farmer's wife." Margaret sighed. "It broke his heart. He threw himself into working the farm after that, rarely took time for a social life." Mia glanced back toward the house, thinking of the bitter man in the wheelchair. Had he been lonely even before the accident? That evening, after settling Tyler in bed with a story, Mia brought Ethan his dinner tray. He was sitting in his usual spot by the window, though the drapes were drawn now against the darkness outside. "Not hungry," he said when she set the tray on the table beside him. "You need to eat to keep up your strength," Mia replied, uncovering the plate to reveal Rosa's famous pot roast. "Why bother?" he muttered. Something in Mia snapped. A week of his self-pity, his bitterness, his determination to push everyone away. It was too much. "That's it," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "I've had enough." She moved to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "You think you're the only person who's ever had their life turned upside down? The only one who's ever lost something important? Well, you're not." Ethan blinked, clearly startled by her outburst. "2 years ago, my husband walked out on me and Tyler. Just left, said he wasn't cut out to be a father. No warning, no discussion. The night before, we'd been planning a family vacation. Then he was gone, and suddenly I was on my own with a 4-year-old, working double shifts at the diner to make ends meet." She took a breath, trying to steady her voice. "But I didn't have the luxury of giving up. I had Tyler counting on me. So I got up every day and did what needed to be done. And now I'm here taking care of you. A man who has everything but can't see it because he's too busy feeling sorry for himself. Ethan's expression darkened. Everything? I can't walk. I can't run my farm. I can't even use the bathroom without help. Don't talk to me about what I have. You have this beautiful house, financial security, people who care about you, your mind, your upper body strength, the possibility of improvement with therapy. Mia counted off on her fingers. And yes, I understand that what you've lost is enormous. I can't imagine how difficult this adjustment has been, but you're choosing to make it worse by shutting out everyone who tries to help. She picked up the fork and held it out to him. Eat your dinner, Mr. Blackwood, or don't. But know that I'll be back tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. Because unlike you, I don't have the luxury of giving up. With that, she turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, heart pounding, wondering if she'd just talked herself out of a job. The next morning, she entered Ethan's room with trepidation, half expecting to find Margaret waiting to tell her she was fired. Instead, she found Ethan already awake, staring at the ceiling. "Good morning," she said cautiously, setting down his breakfast tray. He didn't respond right away, and Mia busied herself opening the drapes to let in the morning sunshine. "You're right." His voice was so quiet she almost missed it. She turned to find him watching her, his expression unreadable. "About what?" she asked. "I've been wallowing, taking out my anger on everyone around me." He looked away. "It's not fair, especially to you." Mia approached slowly, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. "It's understandable. You've been through a trauma. So have you," he said, meeting her eyes again. "Yet here you are, taking care of your son, taking care of me, not giving up." A moment of understanding passed between them, the first real connection since she'd arrived. "I'm not saying I'll be a model patient," he continued with the ghost of a smile. "But I'll try, really try with the therapy, and," he hesitated, "I'd like to meet your son. Properly, I mean. If that's okay." Mia smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I think he'd like that. His name is Tyler." "Tyler," Ethan repeated. "Bring him by this afternoon. Maybe we could have lunch together, on the porch perhaps. I haven't been outside in..." He frowned. "A long time." "The porch sounds perfect," Mia agreed, hope rising within her for the first time since she'd arrived at Blackwood Farm. Something had shifted. A tiny crack in the wall Ethan had built around himself. And for Mia, a glimpse of the man he used to be, and maybe, just maybe, could be again. The porch lunch turned out better than Mia could have hoped. Tyler, initially shy around the man, in the wheelchair, quickly warmed up when Ethan asked him about his dinosaur toy. "This is Rex," Tyler explained, holding up the well-loved T-Rex. "He's the strongest dinosaur of all." "Is that so?" Ethan asked, a genuine smile softening his features for the first time since Mia had arrived. "I used to love dinosaurs when I was your age too." "Really?" Tyler's eyes widened. "Did you have toys like Rex?" "I did. In fact..." Ethan glanced at Mia. "I think they might still be in the attic somewhere. My mom saved a lot of my old things." "Can we look for them?" Tyler asked excitedly. "Tyler," Mia warned gently. "Mr. Blackwood is busy..." "It's Ethan," he interrupted. "Please. Mr. Blackwood was my father." He turned to Tyler. "And yes, we can look for them. Maybe tomorrow I'll ask Margaret where they might be stored." As they finished their lunch, Mia noticed a subtle change in Ethan. He sat straighter in his wheelchair, engaged in conversation, even laughed at Tyler's 6-year-old jokes. It was as if being outdoors, feeling the spring sunshine on his face, had awakened something in him. "The apple trees are beautiful," Mia commented, nodding toward the orchard in the distance. A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "They were my mother's pride and joy. She used to make the best apple pies you've ever tasted." "My mommy makes good pies too," Tyler chimed in. Mia laughed. "I try my best, though I'm sure they're nothing compared to your mother's recipes." "I don't." "No?" Ethan said, studying her with new interest. "I'd be willing to taste test and find out." Was he flirting with her? Mia felt heat rise to her cheeks and quickly busied herself clearing the lunch dishes. That afternoon, while Tyler napped, Mia helped Ethan with his physical therapy exercises. The change in his attitude was remarkable. Where before he'd gone through the motions with minimal effort, now he pushed himself face tight with concentration as he worked with the resistance bands. "You're really trying today," Mia observed, supporting his back as he completed another set. "Someone reminded me recently that giving up isn't an option," he replied, giving her a meaningful look. "Besides, if I'm going to take Tyler on that dinosaur hunt tomorrow, I'll need my strength." The next day, true to his word, Ethan directed them to the attic. Margaret helped Mia navigate the stairs while carrying boxes down for Ethan to search through in the living room, a room he hadn't used since the accident. "Here we go," he said triumphantly, pulling out a battered shoebox filled with plastic dinosaurs, the mighty dinosaur collection of Ethan Blackwood, age 7. Tyler's delighted gasp was worth every moment of the effort it had taken to get Ethan out of his room. The two bonded over the prehistoric creatures, with Ethan naming each one and telling Tyler facts about them that he remembered from his childhood. As the days passed, Ethan ventured further from his room, first the porch, then the living room, and finally a full tour of the ground floor of the house in his wheelchair, with Mia beside him. Each small victory was celebrated, each setback met with determination rather than despair. "Dr. Henderson says you're making remarkable progress," Mia told him one evening as she helped him prepare for bed. "He's very impressed with your upper body strength improvements." "I have a good motivator," Ethan replied, his eyes holding hers. For a moment longer than necessary, Mia looked away, suddenly flustered. She'd been noticing these moments more frequently, lingering glances, casual touches that seemed to spark something between them. But she reminded herself firmly that she was his caregiver, nothing more. He was her employer. And she couldn't afford to forget that, no matter how those blue eyes made her feel. 2 weeks after their first porch lunch, Mia arrived in Ethan's room to find him already dressed and in his wheelchair. "I want to go to the barns today," he announced. Mia hesitated. "Are you sure? That's quite a distance." They built a concrete path out there years ago for deliveries. It's wheelchair accessible. His jaw was set in that stubborn way she'd come to recognize. "I need to see it, Mia. It's been 6 months. The place where you fell," she said softly, understanding dawning. He nodded, hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair tightly. "I need to face it. Then let's go," she said simply. After breakfast, the walk to the barns took longer than expected. Though the path was indeed accessible, Ethan insisted on wheeling himself rather than letting Mia push him. By the time they reached the massive red barn, his arms were trembling with exertion, but there was pride in his eyes at the accomplishment. Inside, the barn was cool and smelled of hay and leather. Farming equipment sat idle, covered with tarps. The horses had been moved to a neighbor's property. After the accident, Ethan hadn't been able to bear the thought of them being cared for by strangers on his land. "It happened there," he said quietly, pointing up to the hayloft that ran along one side of the building. "I was checking on a leak in the roof during a storm, lost my footing on the ladder." Mia could picture it all too vividly. Ethan falling, the sickening moment of impact. She shivered despite the warmth of the day. "I keep thinking if I had just waited until the storm passed," he continued, his voice distant. "One decision. That's all it took to change everything." "You can't torture yourself with what-ifs," Mia said gently. "Believe me, I've been down that road. What if I'd seen the signs that Mark was unhappy? What if I'd been a better wife? It doesn't change anything. It just keeps you trapped in the past." Ethan looked at her, surprise evident on his face. "You think you could have prevented your husband from leaving?" "For a long time, yes," she admitted. "I blamed myself. Thought I must have done something wrong, been something wrong. It took a while to realize that his choices were his own. Just like your accident was just that, an accident, not a punishment or a failure on your part." Ethan wheeled closer. To her, reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, the hands of a farmer despite months of inactivity. "Thank you," he said simply, "for coming here with me today, for everything." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Then the sound of an approaching vehicle broke the spell. "Ethan, you out here?" A man's voice called from outside. Ethan dropped Mia's hand as if burned. "In here," he called back, his voice suddenly tense. A tall man appeared in the doorway. So, similar to Ethan in appearance that Mia knew immediately who he was. James Blackwood, Ethan's younger brother. Handsome like Ethan, but with a smoothness that spoke of city living rather than farm work. "Well, well," James said, eyebrows raised as he took in the scene. "This is unexpected. Margaret told me you've hardly left your room in months, and now I find you out in the barn?" His gaze shifted to Mia, openly appraising. "And you must be the new caregiver, Mia, isn't it?" "Yes," she replied, instantly disliking his tone. "Mia Matthews." James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. James Blackwood, the prodigal brother, returned from Chicago for a flying visit. He turned back to Ethan. "Looks like you're in good hands." "What are you doing here, James?" Ethan asked, his earlier warmth completely gone, replaced by a guarded wariness that Mia hadn't seen since her first days at the farm. "Can't a man check on his brother? It's been, 3 months since my last visit?" James strolled around the barn, running his hand along a tractor's fender. "Plus, the board meeting is next week. Thought we should talk before then." "Board meeting?" Mia looked between the brothers, confused. "Nothing to talk about," Ethan said flatly. "My position hasn't changed. Be reasonable, Ethan. You can't run the farm like this. The Blackwood Agricultural Corporation needs active leadership. I am the leadership. Dad made sure of that in his will. Majority shareholder, remember?" James sighed dramatically, always throwing that in my face. "Fine, keep your controlling interest, but at least consider bringing in professional management. Someone who can actually walk the fields, make decisions on the spot. Someone like you." Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. "I have the business degree. I have the contacts in Chicago. The board respects me. The board wants to sell off parcels to developers, turn Blackwood land into suburban housing tracts and strip malls. Is that what you want?" Mia stood frozen, watching the brothers' confrontation escalate. She felt like an intruder on a private family battle, but wasn't sure if she should leave. "What I want," James said, his friendly facade slipping, "is for you to be practical for once in your life. Your farming days are over, Ethan. Accept it. Let me help you transition the business into something that makes sense now." Ethan's face had gone pale, his knuckles white on his wheelchair armrests. "Get out," he said quietly. "Ethan, get out!" The shout echoed in the cavernous barn. James raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, we'll talk when you've calmed down." He nodded. To Mia, "Nice meeting you. Don't get too comfortable, though. My brother goes through caregivers like most people go through paper towels." After he left, silence hung heavy in the barn. Mia approached Ethan cautiously. "Are you okay?" "Take me back to the house," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. The progress of the past 2 weeks seemed to evaporate with James's visit. Ethan retreated into himself, speaking only when necessary, refusing to leave his room. Even Tyler's visits were met with distracted politeness rather than genuine engagement. After 3 days of this, Mia had had enough. She entered his room, one morning to find him staring out the window again, breakfast untouched on the tray beside him. "This has to stop," she said firmly. "You can't let one visit from your brother undo all your progress." "You don't understand," he muttered. "Then help me understand." Mia pulled up a chair and sat directly in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "What was all that about at the barn? The board? Selling land?" Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "After my parents died, my father's will left me controlling interest in the farm, which is technically Blackwood Agricultural Corporation. James got a significant share too, as well as a trust fund. He moved to Chicago, started a new life. I stayed here, ran the farm, the way Dad would have wanted. And now there's a board of directors, mostly old friends of my father's, who think like James. They see dollar signs when developers come sniffing around our land. With me," he gestured at his wheelchair, "like this, they think it's the perfect time to change direction. James has been lobbying them for months, but you still have controlling interest, right? They can't force you. For now. But there are ways. If they could prove I'm not mentally competent to run the business." He shook his head. "James would never go that far, at least I don't think he would." Mia reached out and took his hand. Then don't give him ammunition. Sitting here withdrawing from life, that's exactly what he wants you to do. You need to show everyone, including yourself, that you're still Ethan Blackwood. Chair or no chair. He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. Why do you care so much, Mia? The question caught her off guard. Why did she care? Because it was her job? Because of Tyler, who missed his dinosaur buddy? Or was it something more, something to do with the way her heart raced when Ethan smiled at her, the way she found herself thinking about him even when they were apart? Because I've seen who you can be, she answered honestly. When you're not hiding, when you're not afraid. I'm not afraid, he protested. Aren't you? She challenged. Afraid of failing? Afraid of needing help? Afraid of letting people get close? He had no answer for that. Come on, she said, standing and moving behind his wheelchair. We're going out. Where? The orchard. It's a beautiful day, and you've been cooped up in here too long. To her surprise, he didn't argue. The apple trees were in full bloom now, creating a canopy of pink and white blossoms overhead as Mia pushed Ethan's wheelchair along the smooth path between the rows. I used to climb these trees as a kid, Ethan said, the fresh air seeming to loosen his tongue. Drove my mother crazy. She was sure I'd fall and break my neck. And did you? Fall, I mean. Once. He smiled at the memory. Broke my arm in 2 places. Dad said it served me right for scaring my mother, but he's the one who taught me to climb in the first place. They stopped in the shade of the largest tree at the end of the row, the tree Margaret had mentioned, where Ethan had proposed to his college girlfriend. This was always my favorite spot on the property, he said, confirming Mia's suspicion. You can see the whole valley from here. Indeed, the view was spectacular, rolling farmland stretching toward distant mountains, patchwork fields in various shades of green and brown. It's beautiful, Mia agreed, leaning against the tree trunk. Peaceful. I asked someone to marry me here once, Ethan said suddenly. She said yes, then changed her mind a month later. Said she couldn't see herself as a farmer's wife. I'm sorry, Mia said softly. Don't be. She was right to leave. We wanted different things. He looked up at Mia. What about you? Did you always see yourself ending up in a small town like Meadow Creek? I grew up here, Mia replied. Left for college thinking I'd never come back. Met Mark in my sophomore year. He was so charming, so sure about everything. He had our whole lives planned out. She smiled ruefully. When I got pregnant with Tyler, we got married, moved back, here because it was cheaper to live, and my mum was here to help with the baby. And then he left, Ethan said, remembering their earlier conversation. And then he left, Mia echoed. No warning. Just said he wasn't cut out for family life after. All that he needed his freedom. His loss, Ethan said quietly. Tyler's a great kid, and you? He trailed off, looking away. And me? Mia prompted, her heart beating faster. You're remarkable, he finished, meeting her eyes again. Strong, compassionate, beautiful. The last word hung in the air between them. Beautiful. No one had called her that in years, not since before Tyler was born, when Mark still looked at her the way Ethan was looking at her now. Ethan, she began, not sure what she was going to say. I know, he interrupted. This is inappropriate. You work for me. I'm your patient. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Believe me, I've been telling myself all the reasons why I shouldn't feel this way about you. Feel what way? She whispered, needing to hear him say it, like I can't wait to see you each morning. Like you're the reason I'm pushing so hard in therapy. Like, he took a deep breath, like I'm falling for you, Mia. And I have no right to. Before she could respond, a small voice called from down the row of trees. Mommy, Ethan, look what I found. Tyler came running toward them, something clutched in his hand. Rosa followed at a more sedate pace, smiling apologetically. He wanted to find you, the housekeeper explained. I hope it's okay that I brought him out here. Of course, Mia said, grateful for the interruption that gave her time to compose herself. Her mind was reeling from Ethan's confession, falling for her. When had that happened? And more importantly, what was she going to do about the fact that Her own feelings were moving in a dangerous direction as well. "Look," Tyler thrust his hand toward them, opening his fingers to reveal a tiny bird's nest with 3 small blue eggs inside. "Where did you find that, buddy?" Ethan asked, his voice remarkably normal given the conversation that had just been interrupted. "Under that tree," Tyler pointed toward a nearby apple tree. "It fell down." "We should put it back," Mia said. "The mother bird will be looking for it." "Can we?" Tyler looked worried. "How will we reach? It was up high." "I can lift you," Mia offered. "Actually," Ethan said, studying the tree, "I have a better idea. There's a ladder in the equipment shed near here. Rosa, would you mind?" The housekeeper nodded and hurried off to fetch it. When she returned with a small orchard ladder, Ethan directed Tyler in placing it against the tree trunk. "Now your mom is going to hold the ladder steady, and you're going to climb up very carefully with the nest," Ethan instructed. "I'll tell you exactly where to put it so it's safe." Mia shot him a grateful look. He could have easily made this into his moment, directing her to replace the nest while he supervised. Instead, he was giving Tyler the chance to be the hero. With careful guidance from Ethan and Mia's steady hand on the ladder, Tyler successfully returned the nest to a secure spot in the crook of a branch. "The mama bird will be so happy," Tyler said as he climbed back down, beaming with pride. "You did great, buddy," Ethan told him, holding up his hand for a high five. "You saved the day." That evening, after Tyler was tucked in bed, Mia returned to Ethan's room with his evening medication. The unfinished conversation from the orchard hung between them like an invisible thread. "About what I said earlier," Ethan began as she handed him the glass of water. "I shouldn't have put you in that position. It was unfair of me." "Ethan, please let me finish," he said. "You're here to do a job. You need this job to support your son. The last thing you need is your employer complicating things with feelings." He set the glass down carefully. "I want you to know that nothing will change. I won't mention it again. Your position here is secure, regardless." Mia sat on the edge of his bed, gathering her courage. "What if I told you that you're not the only one with complications?" He went very still. "What are you saying, Mia?" "I'm saying that I've never met anyone like you. Someone who can be so stubborn and frustrating one minute and so gentle and understanding with my son the next. Someone who's faced incredible challenges, but still has the capacity to care about a bird's nest in a tree." She took a deep breath. "I'm saying that whatever this is between us, it's not one-sided." Hope flared in his eyes, quickly followed by doubt. "But it can't work. I'm like this." He gestured at his legs. "Half a man." "Don't," Mia said sharply. "Don't ever say that again. You are not half of anything. You're Ethan Blackwood, and being in a wheelchair doesn't change who you are." Slowly, carefully, she leaned forward and placed her hand against his cheek. His beard was softer than she'd expected. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing briefly. "I don't know what this is between us," she said softly. "And maybe you're right. Maybe it's too complicated, but I think it's worth exploring. If you do?" Instead of answering with words, Ethan reached up, placed his hand over hers, then turned his face to press a kiss into her palm. The simple gesture sent shivers through Mia's entire body. "I do," he whispered. "God help me, I do." When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home. His kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. But when she moved closer instead, threading her fingers into his hair, the kiss deepened. Years of loneliness and longing poured into this one perfect moment. Neither of them noticed the bedroom door opening slightly, nor saw James Blackwood's face as he observed them for a long moment before silently backing away, a calculating expression in his eyes. The days following their first kiss took on a dreamlike quality for Mia. Outwardly, nothing had changed. She still helped Ethan with his therapy exercises, prepared his meals, and assisted with his daily routine. But underneath the professional veneer, everything was different. A touch that lingered too long, stolen kisses when Tyler wasn't looking, whispered conversations late into the evening after her son was asleep. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked one afternoon as they sat together on the porch swing. Tyler was playing nearby with his growing collection of dinosaurs, some vintage from Ethan's childhood, Others new gifts from the man who was quickly becoming a father figure to him. About what? Mia asked, though she knew what he meant. Us. Me. He gestured at his wheelchair parked beside the swing. I don't want you to feel obligated. Mia took his hand firmly in hers. Listen to me, Ethan Blackwood. I'm here because I want to be. Not out of pity or obligation. I care about you, the man you are, not the condition you're in. He smiled then, the doubt in his eyes fading. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she teased, nudging his shoulder gently. But you're stuck with me anyway. Their laughter drew Tyler's attention. He abandoned his dinosaurs and bounded over to them. Can we have ice cream? He asked hopefully. Rosa said she bought chocolate. After dinner, Mia promised. If you eat all your vegetables. Tyler groaned dramatically, then turned his pleading eyes to Ethan. Will you help me feed my peas to Rex? He likes them better than I do. I don't know, buddy, Ethan replied seriously. Last time Rex ate too many peas, he had a terrible stomachache. Remember? Tyler giggled, delighted by their shared pretend game. Yeah, he burped for days and days. As the boy returned to his toys, Ethan squeezed Mia's hand. You've done an amazing job with him, he said softly. He's a great kid. Thanks, Mia replied, watching her son with a rush of maternal pride. It hasn't been easy on my own, but he makes it all worthwhile. You're not on your own anymore, Ethan said, his voice low and intense. Not if you don't want to be. Mia looked at him, her heart pounding at the implication of his words. Before she could respond, the sound of a car engine interrupted the moment. A sleek black sedan pulled up the driveway, and James Blackwood emerged. Dressed in an expensive suit that looked out of place in the rural setting, Ethan's body tensed immediately. What's he doing back so soon? James strolled up the porch steps, an insincere smile plastered on his face. Well, isn't this cozy? The happy little family. What do you want, James? Ethan's voice was cold. Just checking in on my big brother, James replied, his gaze shifting between Ethan and Mia. And I wanted to discuss some business matters before tomorrow's board meeting. I told you, my position hasn't changed, James sighed theatrically. Yes, your stubborn refusal to see reason. Classic Ethan. He turned to Mia. Would you mind giving us some privacy? Family business and all that. Actually, Ethan said before Mia could respond, I'd like Mia to stay. Surprise flickered across James's face, followed by something harder to read. Suit yourself. He leaned against the porch railing. The board is concerned, Ethan. Your accident has raised questions about the future of Blackwood Agricultural Corporation. Nothing has changed, Ethan insisted. I'm still CEO. I'm still majority shareholder. For now, James agreed smoothly. But there are provisions in Dad's will. If you're found to be incapacitated or making decisions that harm the corporation's interests, the board can vote to override your authority. That's only for mental incapacity, Ethan snapped. There's nothing wrong with my mind, isn't there? James raised an eyebrow. Depression after a traumatic injury is common. Clouded judgment, emotional decisions rather than rational business choices. His gaze slid meaningfully to Mia. Ethan's face darkened with anger. Get to the point, James. The board is prepared to offer you a generous package. You keep the house, a substantial yearly income, full medical benefits. All you have to do is step aside and let professionals run the business. Professionals like you, I suppose? James spread his hands. I have. The qualifications, the contacts, the ability to physically tour the property and meet with potential partners. Partners who want to carve up Blackwood land and turn it into strip malls, Ethan growled. Some parcels, yes, James admitted. The less productive ones. It's just good business sense, Ethan. The family can't afford sentimentality anymore, not with you, limited as you are. Mia felt Ethan's hand tighten around hers, his knuckles white with tension. My answer is still no, Ethan said firmly. Now get off my porch. James straightened, adjusting his expensive suit. I hoped you'd be reasonable. For your sake. His eyes flicked to Mia again. For everyone's sake, the board meeting is tomorrow at 2 p.m. I suggest you reconsider by then. After he drove away, Ethan remained rigid with anger. He's up to something, he muttered. I know my brother. He wouldn't be this confident unless he had an ace up his sleeve. What can he really do? Mia asked. You said yourself that you have controlling interest. Unless they invoke the incapacity clause, Ethan replied grimly. If the board unanimously agrees that I'm making decisions harmful to the corporation's interests, they can temporarily suspend my voting rights while seeking a court ruling. But that's ridiculous. You're perfectly competent. Am I? He gestured. At his wheelchair again. I haven't been to the office in 6 months, haven't reviewed the books or production reports, haven't met with any of our distributors or suppliers. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Maybe James is right. Maybe I am letting sentimentality cloud my judgment. Don't you dare, Mia said fiercely. Don't let him make you doubt yourself. This land has been in your family for generations. If you don't want to sell it off in pieces, that's your right. Ethan looked at her with such tenderness that it made her breath catch. What did I do to deserve you walking into my life, Mia Matthews? You got lucky, she replied lightly, trying to ease the tension. Very, very lucky. That evening, after dinner and the promised ice cream, Mia tucked Tyler into bed in their suite in the East Wing. I like it here, Tyler said sleepily as she pulled the covers up around him. I like Ethan. He makes you smile, Mommy. Does he? Mia brushed the hair from her son's forehead, surprised by his perception. Uh-huh. You smile different with him. Like in the pictures with Daddy, before he went away. Mia's heart constricted. Tyler rarely mentioned his father anymore. Ethan is very special to me, she admitted. Is that okay with you? Tyler nodded, eyes already drooping. He tells better dinosaur stories than Daddy did. After Tyler fell asleep, Mia decided to check on Ethan once more before retiring for the night. She found his bedroom empty, which was unusual. A quick search of the ground floor revealed no sign of him either. Concerned, she headed toward his office, a room he had avoided since the accident. The door was ajar, and she could see light spilling. Out into the hallway. Ethan, she called softly, pushing the door open wider. He was at his desk, surrounded by stacks of paper, his laptop open before him. Mia, he looked up, distracted. Sorry, I should have told you where I was going. It's... Okay, I was just worried. She entered the room, taking in the mahogany bookshelves lining the walls, the large desk, the comfortable leather chairs. It was a beautiful space, clearly designed for serious work. What are you doing? Preparing for tomorrow's board meeting, he replied, determination in his voice. James is right about one thing. I've been neglecting my responsibilities. If I'm going to fight him, I need to know exactly what I'm fighting for. Mia moved to stand behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders. Is there anything I can do to help? Just you being here helps more than you know. He reached up to cover one of her hands with his own. But it's getting late. You should get some rest. So should you, she pointed out. I will. Soon. I just need to finish reviewing these quarterly reports. Mia leaned down and pressed a kiss to the top of his head. Don't stay up too late. You need your strength for tomorrow. She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. Mia, thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. She smiled back at him. Always. Later that night, long after she should have been asleep, Mia found herself unable to settle. Worry about the upcoming board meeting kept her mind racing. Would James really try to declare Ethan incompetent? What would happen to them if he succeeded? In just a few short weeks, Blackwood Farm had become home, not just for the financial security it provided, but for the sense of belonging she'd found here. The thought of losing it all was terrifying. Unable to lie still any longer, she slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Tyler. Maybe a cup of chamomile tea would help her sleep. She padded quietly down the hallway toward the kitchen, not bothering to turn on lights in the familiar path. As she passed Ethan's office, she noticed the light was still on. Peering inside, she found him asleep at his desk, head pillowed on, his arms amidst the piles of paperwork. Something squeezed in her chest at the sight. His determination to fight for his legacy, his exhaustion evident even in sleep. Quietly, she entered the room, intending to wake him gently and help him to bed. But as she approached the desk, she noticed something odd. Behind Ethan's chair, partially hidden by a bookshelf, was what appeared to be a door, one she hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, and she could see a sliver of darkness beyond. Curiosity got the better of her. Carefully stepping around Ethan's wheelchair, Mia pushed the door open wider. It was a small room, more of a large closet really, with shelves lining the walls. She felt along the wall for a light switch and flipped it on. What she saw made her gasp. The shelves weren't filled with office supplies or file boxes as she'd expected. Instead, they held dozens of journals, their leather covers worn with age and use, photos in frames, small trinkets and mementos, and stacks upon stacks of envelopes tied with ribbon. One envelope had fallen to the floor, its contents spilling out. Mia bent to pick it up, intending to replace it on the shelf. As she gathered the papers, a familiar name caught her eye, her own. Her hands trembling slightly, she unfolded the letter. "Dear Mia, I saw you at the town festival today. You were laughing with your friends, your hair catching the sunlight like spun gold. I wanted to approach you, to finally speak to you after all these years of watching from afar. But the words died in my throat. What would someone like you want with someone like me? You've always seemed so free, so full of life. While I've always been bound by responsibility and expectations, the college-bound farmer's son destined to inherit the family business. What could I possibly offer you that would make you look my way? So I watched from a distance, as I always do. And I wrote this letter, as I always do. A letter you'll never read, filled with words I'll never say aloud. Maybe someday I'll find the courage. Until then I remain, yours from afar." Ethan. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the letter, dated 5 years ago. With shaking hands, she reached for another envelope from the stack, then another, and another. Each contained a letter addressed to her, spanning years, chronicling Ethan's secret feelings from a distance. "I heard you got engaged today. His name is Mark. They say he's from the city, that he swept you off your feet during your second year of college. I should be happy for you. Instead, I find myself wondering what might have been if I'd spoken up sooner. They say you're expecting a baby. I saw you in town today, your hand resting on your stomach, that special glow about you that mothers-to-be have. I wanted to congratulate you but couldn't bring myself to approach. What right do I have to insert myself into your happiness? I heard about Mark leaving. The whole town is talking about it. How could he abandon you and your son? If you were mine, I would never." Letter after letter, year after year. Ethan had loved her from afar, watched her life unfold, never once speaking up or revealing his feelings. "Mia?" She whirled around to find Ethan in the doorway, his expression a mixture of shock and embarrassment. I'm sorry," she stammered, suddenly aware of how this must look, her snooping through his private things in the middle of the night. "I saw the door was open and You found them," he said quietly, wheeling further into the room. "My letters. They're all to me." She could hardly believe it. "All these years you loved you from a distance," he finished for her. "Yes. But why? Why didn't you ever say anything?" Ethan sighed, looking around at the shelves of letters and mementos. "At first, you were the pretty girl from town who didn't even know I existed. By the time I'd worked up the courage to approach you, you were engaged to Mark. Then you had Tyler and..." He shrugged. "The timing was never right." "How can you say I didn't know you existed?" Mia asked, confused. "Everyone knew the Blackwood family. Knew of us, sure, but you never really saw me, Mia, not the way I saw you." He reached for a framed photo on one of the shelves and handed it to her. It was a group shot from their high school days, the county fair judging competition. Mia recognized her teenage self standing with friends, laughing at something off camera. In the background, partially obscured, was a young Ethan staring directly at her with an expression of pure longing. "I was always in the background of your life," he said softly. "Watching, wishing." "I had no idea," Mia whispered, setting the photo down carefully. "Of course not, I made sure of that." He gestured at the letter in her hand. "These were never meant for you to see. They were just a way for me to express feelings I couldn't share." "But why here? In this hidden room?" "It was my father's gun safe originally. After he died and I took over, I converted it to this." He looked almost embarrassed. My shrine to unrequited love. Pathetic, isn't it? No, Mia said firmly, kneeling before his wheelchair so they were at eye level. It's not pathetic, it's... She struggled to find the words. It's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Ethan gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Romantic? A man too cowardly to approach the woman he loves, writing letters she'll never read. That's not romance, Mia, that's fear. Then why keep writing them all these years? Because I couldn't stop loving you, he said simply. Even when you were with Mark, even when you had Tyler, I told myself it was wrong, that I should move on. But he trailed off with a helpless gesture at the shelves of letters. Mia felt tears welling in her eyes. All those years she'd spent feeling invisible, unworthy of love after Mark abandoned her. And all that time this man had been loving her silently, devotedly. Did you ever plan to tell me? She asked. Honestly, no. What would be the point? And then after the accident, he looked down at his useless legs. I had even less to offer you. Ethan Blackwood, Mia said fiercely, taking his face between her hands. Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare think it. You have so much to offer. Your kindness, your patience with Tyler, your determination, your heart. She pressed her hand to his chest. This beautiful heart that's been loving me for years. She leaned forward and kissed him deeply, pouring all her newfound understanding into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. I wish I'd known sooner, she whispered against his lips. All that wasted time. We're here now, he replied, stroking her cheek. That's what matters. A noise from the doorway made them both turn. James stood there, his expression cold as he took in the scene. The hidden room, the letters scattered around them, Mia kneeling before Ethan's wheelchair. Well, well, he said with a mirthless smile. Isn't this interesting? Ethan immediately positioned his wheelchair between Mia and his brother. What are you doing here, James? It's the middle of the night. I left some documents in the living room earlier, came back to collect them. James leaned against the doorframe, his gaze calculating. But I've found something much more valuable, haven't I? A secret room. Love letters to the caregiver. My, Ethan. What would the board say about this obsession? Get out, Ethan growled. Oh, I'm going, James replied smoothly. But I'll be back tomorrow. With the board members. I think they'll find your little shrine here quite enlightening when we discuss your mental fitness to run the company. After he left, silence fell heavy in the small room. He's going to use this against me, Ethan said, his voice hollow. Make it seem like I'm unstable, obsessed. Then we'll fight him, Mia replied firmly. Together. These letters don't show instability, Ethan. They show devotion, loyalty, the same qualities that make you the right person to protect your family's legacy. You don't know James when he wants something, Ethan warned. He can be ruthless. So can I, Mia replied, her jaw set in determination. When it comes to protecting the people I love. The word hung between them, unexamined but unmistakable. Love. Did she love Ethan? The thought should have frightened her after everything she'd been through with Mark. Instead, it filled her with a sense of rightness, of coming home. We should get some rest, she said finally. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Ethan nodded, but as she turned to leave, he caught her hand. Mia, whatever happens tomorrow with the board, know that finding you, being with you these past weeks, it's worth more to me than all of Blackwood Farm. She squeezed his hand in return. We're not going to lose the farm or each other, I promise. But as she made her way back to her room, worry gnawed at her. James clearly had a plan and he seemed confident. What if the board sided with him? What would happen to them then? Morning came too quickly. Mia woke to find Tyler already up and playing quietly with his dinosaurs on the bedroom floor. Morning, sweetie, she said, her voice husky with sleep. You're up early. Rex was hungry, Tyler explained seriously, and I heard people talking downstairs, lots of people. Mia glanced at the clock. Barely 7 a.m. Who would be here this early? After helping Tyler dress and settling him with Rosa in the kitchen for breakfast, Mia went in search of Ethan. She found him in his office, already dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and tie, his hair neatly combed, a stark contrast to the disheveled man she'd first met weeks ago. The board members are here, he said. Without preamble. James brought them early before we could prepare. What does that mean for us? It means we're out of time. His expression was grim. They're touring the property now. The meeting will start in an hour. What can I do? Mia asked, fighting down panic. Ethan reached for her hand. Just be with me, your strength gives me strength. The conference room adjacent to Ethan's office was already set up when they entered an hour later. A long mahogany table, surrounded by serious-looking men and women in business attire. James sat at one end, looking supremely confident. He'd left the other end open for Ethan's wheelchair. "Ah, the man of the hour," James said as Ethan wheeled into position. His gaze flicked to Mia and his caregiver. "Though I think we all understand that your role has expanded beyond professional boundaries, hasn't it, Ms. Matthews?" One of the older board members, a grey-haired woman with steel-rimmed glasses, frowned at James. "That's hardly relevant to our discussion today, James. Let's stick to business matters." "Oh, but it is relevant, Mrs. Harrington," James replied smoothly. "When assessing my brother's fitness to lead this corporation, his personal judgment is very much on the table." He slid a folder across to each board member. "If you'll open these, you'll find some concerning information." Mia felt sick as she watched the board members review whatever James had prepared. From their expressions, raised eyebrows, troubled frowns, it wasn't good. "These are taken out of context," Ethan said firmly. "Yes, I wrote those letters. They were private thoughts never meant to be shared. They have no bearing on my ability to run this company." "Private thoughts," James scoffed. "James, a hidden room filled with years of letters to a woman who didn't even know you were alive. That speaks to obsession, Ethan. Instability." "Or devotion," Mia countered, unable to remain silent. "Loyalty, commitment, the same qualities that have made Ethan a successful leader for this company since your father's death." "Ms. Matthews," James said with exaggerated patience, "while your defense of my brother is touching, you're hardly an unbiased observer, especially given your financial situation prior to your employment here." Mia felt her cheeks burn. So he'd investigated her too. "That's enough, James," Ethan cut in sharply. "If you want to question my competence, do it on the basis of business decisions, not my personal life." "Very well," James agreed readily. "Let's talk business. Specifically, the offers from Meridian Development to purchase parcels of our eastern acreage. Offers you've repeatedly rejected, despite their generous terms, and the board's recommendation to accept." "Because that land is productive," Ethan argued. "The orchards there produce 40% of our annual fruit yield. Orchards that require significant maintenance and seasonal labor," James countered. "The one-time payment from Meridian would exceed 5 years of projected profits from those orchards, without the associated costs and risks." The debate continued, with James methodically challenging Ethan's every business decision over the past 6 months. To Mia's relief, Ethan held his ground admirably, displaying a depth of knowledge about the farm's operations that clearly impressed several board members. But James had saved his most devastating argument for last. "The simple fact is," he said, leaning forward intently, "Blackwood Agricultural Corporation requires active, hands-on leadership, someone who can physically inspect the fields, meet with distributors, represent us at industry events. My brother's condition," he gestured at Ethan's wheelchair, "makes that impossible." "I disagree," came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Dr. Henderson standing there, medical bag in hand. "Doctor?" Ethan said, surprised. "I wasn't expecting you until this afternoon." "I received a rather urgent call from young Tyler," the doctor replied with a small smile. "Something about his friend Ethan needing help with mean people trying to take his farm." Despite the tension in the room, Mia couldn't help a small laugh. Her son, the little defender. "Since I was coming anyway," Dr. Henderson continued, approaching the table. "I brought Ethan's latest medical evaluation. With his permission, I'd like to share it with the board." Ethan nodded, and the doctor distributed copies of a report to each member. "As you can see," Dr. Henderson explained as they reviewed the document, "Ethan has made remarkable progress in his physical therapy. His upper body strength has increased significantly, and most importantly, there are promising signs of returning sensation in his lower extremities." Murmurs rippled around the table. James's confident expression faltered. "Are you saying he might walk again?" Mrs. Harrington asked. "With continued therapy and possibly one more surgical intervention, yes. I believe there's a good chance Ethan will regain at least partial mobility within the next 6 to 12 months. That's wonderful news," one of the male board members said, smiling at Ethan. "Why didn't you tell us, son?" "Because I didn't want false hope," Ethan replied honestly. "And because whether I walk again or remain in this chair, my commitment to Blackwood Farm remains the same. This land, this legacy, it's not just about profit margins or quarterly reports. It's about family, tradition, the promise my father made to his father, and that I made to him." He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. "If you truly believe I'm not capable of leading this company, then vote accordingly. But do it based on my performance, my decisions, not on my brother's distortions or my physical limitations." The room fell, silent as his words sank in. Finally, Mrs. Harrington spoke. "I think we've heard enough. I move that we table any discussion of leadership changes and instead focus on how we can better support Ethan during his recovery. All in favor?" One by one, hands raised around the table, all except James, who sat rigid with barely controlled fury. "The motion carries," Mrs. Harrington announced with a satisfied nod. "Now shall we discuss the actual business agenda for today's meeting?" As the board turned to routine matters, Mia slipped out to find Tyler and thank him for his quick thinking in calling Dr. Henderson. She found him in the kitchen with Rosa, proudly explaining how he had saved Ethan's farm by using the phone when no one was looking. "You were very brave," Mia told him, gathering him into a hug. "But next time ask an adult before using the phone, okay?" "Okay," he agreed easily. "Is Ethan still going to live here with us?" The question caught Mia off guard. "Well, this is Ethan's house, sweetie. We're the ones staying here with him." Tyler considered this, his small brow furrowed in thought. "But we're not going away, right? We're a family now." Out of the mouths of babes. Mia felt her heart swell with emotion. Were they a family? These past weeks had moved so quickly, feelings developing at lightning speed, yet somehow it all felt right. "We'll see, Tyler," she said, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. "For now, we're staying right here." Later that afternoon, after the board members had departed and James had stormed off to his hotel in town, Mia found Ethan in the orchard, at their spot under the big apple tree. "Tyler's quite the hero," she said, joining him. "Dr. Henderson said he called and told him it was an emergency meeting situation." Ethan laughed, the sound lighter than she'd ever heard from him. "Smart kid, takes after his mother." "The board seemed impressed with you," Mia observed, "even without the doctor's report." "Mrs. Harrington pulled me aside afterward," Ethan admitted. "Said she never had any intention of voting against me. Apparently she and my father were close friends, and she promised him she'd look out for me. So we won. James can't take the farm?" "Not this way, not now," Ethan confirmed, though I doubt he's given up entirely. Mia knelt beside his wheelchair, taking his hands in hers. "Dr. Henderson's news, about you possibly walking again. Why didn't you tell me there was improvement?" "Like I told the board, I didn't want false hope. For either of us." He squeezed her hands. "And I needed to know that you could accept me as I am now, not because of what I might become in the future." "Oh, Ethan," she sighed. "Haven't you figured it out yet? I fell in love with the man in this chair, stubborn, frustrating, compassionate, loving. Walking or not, that man is who I want." "Say that again," he whispered, his eyes suddenly intense. "Which part?" "The part where you love me." Mia smiled, leaning in close. "I love you, Ethan Blackwood. I think maybe I always have, even when I didn't know it." "I love you too, Mia Matthews," he replied, pulling her into his lap to kiss her thoroughly. "More than the orchards, more than the farm, more than anything." As the afternoon sunlight filtered through the apple blossoms above them, casting dappled shadows on their entwined forms, Mia felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges they might face, James's ongoing schemes, Ethan's recovery, building a life together, they would face them as a family formed not by obligation or necessity, but by the most powerful force of all, love that had waited patiently in the shadows, finally stepping into the light. 3 months passed in a blur of happiness for Mia. Summer arrived at Blackwood Farm, bringing with it long, golden days filled with work and love and laughter. Tyler thrived in the sprawling environment, spending his days exploring the property, helping Rosa in the kitchen, or sitting beside Ethan as he worked in his office, quietly coloring while the man he now adored managed farm business. Ethan's recovery continued at a steady pace. The sensation in his legs had progressed from occasional tingling to more consistent feeling, and with daily physical therapy sessions, he had begun to regain limited movement in his left leg. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Mia cautioned one afternoon as she helped him through his exercises. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he concentrated on moving his foot through the resistance of the therapy band. "Not hard enough," he grunted, determination etched on his face. "Dr. Henderson says if I keep improving at this rate, I might be ready for the corrective surgery by fall. And if you injure yourself by overdoing it, you'll set your recovery back months," she reminded him, gently lowering his leg back to the mat. "That's enough for today, doctor's orders." Ethan grumbled but allowed her to help him back into his wheelchair. "You're a tough taskmaster, Matthews." "Someone has to be," she replied with a smile, leaning down to kiss him quickly. "Otherwise, your stubbornness would be the end of you." Despite her worries about his pushing too hard, Mia couldn't help but be amazed by his progress. The bitter, angry man she'd met months ago had been replaced by someone full of purpose and hope. He spent more time outdoors now, often having Margaret or one of the farm hands push his wheelchair through the fields so he could inspect crops and check on operations. He attended livestock auctions, met with distributors, and even handled a confrontation with James when his brother made another attempt to sway the board. "He's backed off for now," Ethan told her after that particularly tense meeting. "But he's not giving up." "Neither are we," Mia had assured him, squeezing his hand. "We." The word came so naturally now. Somewhere along the way they had become a unit, a family in all but name. Mia still maintained her role as Ethan's caregiver officially, but the lines had blurred. Their relationship had deepened, strengthened by shared challenges and quiet moments of joy. One such moment came on a warm July evening. Mia had put Tyler to bed after an exhausting day of swimming in the pond and playing tag with the neighbors' children who had come to visit. She found Ethan on the porch, watching the fireflies begin to emerge as dusk settled over the farm. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, settling into the swing beside him. "I was thinking about how much my life has changed since you came here," he replied, taking her hand in his. "6 months ago I thought my life was over. Now," he gestured at the peaceful scene before them, "now I can't wait to see what each new day brings." "That's quite a change of heart, Mr. Blackwood," she teased gently. "All thanks to a stubborn caregiver who refused to let me wallow," he replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "And her dinosaur-loving son, who reminds me daily how to find joy in simple things." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "I called the agency today," Ethan said suddenly. "Agency?" Mia questioned, puzzled. "The healthcare agency that sent you to me. I told them we no longer require their services." Mia sat up straighter, her heart suddenly pounding. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want you to be my caregiver anymore, Mia." His eyes held hers steadily. "I don't understand." A cold fear gripped her. Had she done something wrong? Had she crossed a line in their relationship that made him uncomfortable? "I'm hiring a professional physical therapist to come 3 times a week," he explained, "for my continued recovery. But I don't need a caregiver. I need—" "What?" she whispered when he paused. "A partner. A wife." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "If you'll have me." Mia's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. It wasn't ostentatious or flashy, but elegant and timeless, exactly what she would have chosen herself. "Ethan," she breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "I know it hasn't been long," he hurried on. "And if you think it's too soon, I understand. But Mia, I've loved you for years from afar. Now that I finally have you in my life, I don't want to." Waste another moment. I want to build a life with you and Tyler. I want us to be a family, officially." "Yes," she said simply, her heart too full for elaborate words. "Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you." His face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "How did you know?" "My size?" she asked, admiring the way the diamond caught the last light of day. "It was my mother's," he explained. "Margaret helped me have it resized. She took one of your other rings from your jewelry box to get the measurement." "Sneaky," Mia laughed, then sobered as the significance hit her. "Your mother's ring? Ethan, are you sure that's such a special piece of your family history?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied. "My mother would have loved you, Mia. She would have been overjoyed to see her ring on your finger." Mia leaned forward and kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "When should we tell Tyler?" she asked. "First thing tomorrow," Ethan suggested. "Though I have a feeling he already knows something's up. He helped me pick out the box." "That little sneak," Mia laughed. "No wonder he was so insistent on going to bed without his usual 3 bedtime stories tonight." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. A small ceremony in the orchard, perhaps in September when the apples would be ripening. Just family and close friends. Tyler would be the ring bearer, of course. Margaret and Rosa were already preparing to help with the arrangements, having been in on the secret for weeks. "I've never been so happy," Mia confessed as he walked her to her room later that night. Though they had grown intimate in their relationship, they had agreed to maintain separate bedrooms until they were married, partly for Tyler's sake and partly because it felt right to honor that tradition. "This is just the beginning," Ethan promised, kissing her once more before she slipped into her room. True to plan, they told Tyler over breakfast the next morning. His reaction was everything they'd hoped for, pure excitement. "Does this mean Ethan will be my dad now?" he asked, his eyes wide. "If you'd like that," Ethan replied carefully, looking to Mia for guidance. "Ethan will be your stepdad," Mia explained, "but he loves you very much, just like a dad would." "Can I call you Dad?" Tyler asked Ethan directly, with the straightforward innocence of childhood. Ethan's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "I would be honored, buddy, but only if you're comfortable with it." "Okay, Dad." Tyler tested the word, then broke into a huge grin. "I like it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity as they prepared for both the wedding and Ethan's upcoming surgery. Dr. Henderson had confirmed that he was making excellent progress and would likely be a good candidate for the procedure that might help him walk again. "Even if it doesn't work completely," Ethan told Mia one night as they reviewed the doctor's reports, "just having more mobility would make such a difference." "I love you either way," she assured him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Chair or no chair." "I know you do," he replied, kissing the top of her head, "but I want to dance with you at our wedding. Really dance, not just sway in my wheelchair." The date for the surgery was set for 2 weeks after their planned wedding day. It was a risky move. If something went wrong during the operation, it could cast a shadow over the start of their married life. But Ethan was determined, and Mia supported his decision. As the wedding approached, Mia found herself busier than ever. Between helping Ethan with his therapy, planning the ceremony, and keeping up with Tyler's boundless energy, she barely had time to breathe. But it was a happy kind of busy, filled with purpose and love. Then, 1 week before the wedding, James returned. Mia was in the kitchen with Rosa discussing the menu for the reception when Margaret rushed in, her usually calm demeanor visibly shaken. "James is here," she announced. "With lawyers." Mia's stomach dropped. "Where's Ethan?" "In his office." "They're in there now." Without a word, Mia hurried to find her fiancé, worry gnawing at her. What new scheme had James cooked up this time? She found Ethan's office door closed, raised voices audible from within. Rather than interrupt, she waited in the hallway, pacing anxiously. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened, and James emerged, followed by 2 stern-looking men in expensive suits. James stopped short when he saw her. "Well, if it isn't the bride-to-be," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Enjoying spending my brother's money? The ring looks expensive." "It was your mother's," Mia replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. Something flickered across James's face, surprise perhaps, or a hint of genuine emotion quickly suppressed. "How fitting," he finally said, then brushed past, her with his lawyers in tow. Once they had left, Mia rushed into the office to find Ethan sitting behind his desk, face pale but composed. "What happened?" she asked, going to his side. "What did he want?" "He's suing for control of the company," Ethan explained, his voice tight, "claiming I'm physically unfit to manage operations and that my decisions since the accident have damaged shareholder value." "He can't do that," Mia protested. "The board already rejected that argument. This is different. He's going to court, trying to get a judge to enforce the clause in my father's will about incapacity." Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's a long shot, but it could tie us up in legal battles for months, maybe years. Why now? Why a week before our wedding?" "To ruin it, I imagine," Ethan replied grimly, "or to pressure me into settling." He offered a compromise. "If I agree to sell the Eastern Orchards to his developer friends, he'll drop the lawsuit." "The orchards where we're getting married?" Mia felt sick. "He's trying to take everything that matters to you." "To us," Ethan corrected, reaching for her hand. "But he won't succeed. I've already called our lawyers. They're confident his case is weak, especially given my medical progress and the board's continued support." Despite his reassurances, the lawsuit cast a shadow over their wedding preparations. Mia tried to maintain a positive attitude for Tyler's psyche, but the stress was taking a toll on both her and Ethan. 3 days before the ceremony, Mia was arranging flowers in the living room when she heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway. Glancing out the window, she was surprised to see Mrs. Harrington, the elderly board member who had supported Ethan so steadfastly at the previous meeting. "Mia, dear," the older woman greeted her warmly when Margaret showed her in. "I hope I'm not intruding. Is Ethan available?" "He's resting," Mia explained. "The therapy session this morning was particularly intense." "Then perhaps I could speak with you," Mrs. Harrington suggested. "It's about James's lawsuit." Mia led her to the sitting room, anxiety churning in her stomach. "Has something happened?" "Not yet, but it might." Mrs. Harrington settled into an armchair, arranging her skirt with practiced precision. "I've known the Blackwood family for over 40 years. I was there when Ethan was born. When James came along 2 years later, I loved their parents dearly." "Ethan says you were his father's closest friend," Mia said. "I was. Which is why I feel I must get involved now." The older woman fixed Mia with a penetrating gaze. "James has always been ambitious, willing to bend rules to get what he wants, but this lawsuit crosses a line. He's willing to destroy his brother's happiness out of greed. Can you help stop him?" Mia asked hopefully. "Perhaps. You see, before Henry Blackwood died, that's Ethan and James's father, he entrusted me with certain documents, information he hoped would never be needed, but that he preserved just in case." Mrs. Harrington reached into her handbag and withdrew a sealed envelope. "This contains evidence of financial irregularities in James's management of a family investment fund several years ago. Nothing criminal, but certainly unethical. Henry covered it up to protect James, but kept the documentation in case James ever threatened Ethan's position with the company." Mia stared at the envelope in shock. "And you think this would stop the lawsuit?" "I'm certain of it. James values his reputation in the business community above all else. This would damage it irreparably." She placed the envelope on the coffee table between them. "I leave it to you and Ethan to decide whether to use it. I've kept my promise to Henry by preserving this information all these years. Now I'm fulfilling his wish to protect Ethan by giving it to you." After Mrs. Harrington left, Mia sat for a long time looking at the envelope. When Ethan woke from his nap, she brought it to him, explaining the older woman's visit. "I never knew," he said softly after examining the contents. "Dad never told me about this." "What are you going to do?" Mia asked. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, lost in thought. "Arrange a meeting with James," he finally said. "Tomorrow." The meeting took place in Ethan's office. Mia insisted on being present, standing supportively behind Ethan's wheelchair as James sauntered in, looking confident. "Make this quick," James said, checking his expensive watch. "I have a meeting with my lawyers in an hour." "I have a proposition for you," Ethan replied calmly. "You drop this lawsuit permanently, and I don't release these documents to the board." He slid the envelope across the desk. James's expression changed from smug to shocked as he reviewed the contents. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, his face paling. "Does it matter? They're authentic, as you well know." "This is blackmail," James said, his voice shaking with anger. "No, it's a brother trying to protect his family, both from outside. Threats and from your worst impulses," Ethan replied. "Dad covered this up because he loved you, James. He saved these documents because he loved me." "You would really use this against me?" James asked, genuine hurt flashing across his face. "I don't want to," Ethan answered honestly, "but I will if you force my hand. This has to stop, James. The lawsuits, the constant attacks, the attempts to sell off pieces of our family legacy for quick profit. All of it." James stared at the documents for a long moment, then at his brother. For the first time, Mia thought she saw a glimpse of regret in his eyes. "It was never supposed to be this way," he said quietly. "After the accident, I thought you'd need help running things, that you'd welcome my involvement. Instead of asking, you tried to take control," Ethan pointed out. "You saw my injury as an opportunity, not a family tragedy." "I was wrong," James admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "About a lot of things." His gaze shifted to Mia. "Including you. I thought you were after his money." "I love your brother," Mia said simply. "The man, not his wealth." "So I've come to realize." James gathered the documents and handed them back to Ethan. "You don't need these. I'll withdraw the lawsuit. No conditions." The brothers looked at each other, years of rivalry and misunderstanding hanging between them. "Come to the wedding," Ethan said suddenly. "Be my best man, like we always planned. When we were kids." Surprise registered on James's face, followed by something that looked suspiciously like tears in his eyes. "You still want me there? After everything?" "You're my brother," Ethan said simply. "We're family, despite everything." James nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "I'd be honored," he finally managed. After he left, Mia wrapped her arms around Ethan's shoulders from behind. "That was generous of you," she murmured. "Life's too short for endless grudges," he replied, reaching up to cover her hands with his own. "My accident taught me that, if nothing else." 3 days later, under the canopy of apple trees in full late summer glory, Mia and Ethan exchanged vows surrounded by friends and family. Tyler stood proudly at Ethan's side, carefully holding the rings on a small pillow. James, true to his word, served as best man, his usual cynical demeanor softened by genuine emotion as he watched his brother pledge his life to the woman he loved. Ethan remained in his wheelchair for the ceremony, but during the reception, with James's help on one side and Dr. Henderson's on the other, he stood for their first dance. It wasn't the full mobility he'd hoped for. That would require the upcoming surgery and months more of therapy. But it was enough to hold Mia close as they swayed gently to the music, their hearts beating as one. "Happy," he whispered against her hair. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, lifting her face for his kiss. Later, as evening fell and lanterns were lit throughout the orchard, Mia found herself sitting with Tyler on a picnic blanket, watching as Ethan chatted, with guests nearby. Her son leaned against her, tired but happy. "Is this our happily ever after, Mommy?" he asked, stifling a yawn. Mia smiled, running her hand through his hair. "Not the end, sweetie, just the beginning. We have many happy years ahead of us, as a family," Tyler added with certainty. "Yes," she agreed, catching Ethan's eye across the gathering. He smiled at her, a smile full of love and promise and future plans. As a family. 2 weeks later, Mia sat in the hospital. Waiting room during Ethan's surgery, Tyler's small hand clasped tightly in hers. James was there too, having extended his stay to support them through the procedure. "He'll be fine," James assured her during the long hours of waiting. Ethan's always been the strong one. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression told them everything before he spoke. "The surgery was successful," he announced with a smile. "It will be a long recovery process, but I'm cautiously optimistic that Ethan will regain significant mobility." Relief flooded through Mia. Not because it mattered to her whether Ethan walked again, She had meant it when she said she loved him either way, but because she knew how much it meant to him. In the recovery room, she sat beside his bed, holding his hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. "Did it work?" he mumbled, still groggy from anesthesia. "It went perfectly," she assured him, "but you have months of hard work ahead." "Worth it," he murmured, squeezing her hand weakly. "For you, for Tyler, for our future." 6 months later, on a crisp winter morning, Mia stood at the kitchen window, watching as Ethan walked slowly across the yard, leaning on a cane. Tyler danced around him, pointing out interesting rocks and sticks with the endless enthusiasm of childhood. The recovery had been challenging. Painful therapy sessions, days of frustration when progress seemed to stall, moments of doubt that he'd ever regain the mobility the doctors had promised. But through it all, Mia had been by his side, encouraging, supporting, loving him through every step. "They'll catch their death out there without jackets," Margaret commented, coming to stand beside her at the window. "5 more minutes and I'll call them in," Mia promised, unable to tear her eyes away from the sight of her husband and son, their breath forming clouds in the cold air as they laughed together. From financially desperate single mother to beloved wife. From bitter, paralyzed patient to healing, hopeful husband. Life had taken them both on unexpected journeys, only to bring them together when they needed each other most. As if sensing her thoughts, Ethan looked up toward the window and smiled at her, raising his hand in a wave. Mia waved back, her heart full to bursting. She had come to Blackwood Farm to earn a living, desperate to provide for her son. Instead, she had found love letters hidden away for years, a man who had loved her from afar, and the family she had always dreamed of, but never thought she'd find. Not just a living, but a life, full, rich, and overflowing with love.